Thank you so much for joining us for this recap of a section of our Proverbs read-through that we're doing as men together here at church and beyond, really. And I'm just thankful that as I go through this, there are mid-30s number of people, low to mid-30s number of people that are going through this together. And so if that's something that you haven't done yet and this is your first time watching, we want you to jump right in and join us. It's never going to be too late. And so you can click one of the links below and join our group and start doing the read-through with us. We'd love to have you using that Bible app together with us and then on your own as well after we're all done. In addition to that, I want to take a minute and kind of say something about this. In regards to doing the read-through of the book of Proverbs, I've been able to, as we do these recaps, interview a buddy of mine each time. And these aren't people I generated out of nothing and said, hey, have you heard of Proverbs? Let's talk about it. I'm blessed to be able to be surrounded by men at this church in particular that want to be in the Word. And many of those people are you watching today. So I just want to say thank you for that. Today in particular, another buddy of mine that gets to join us today and talk about his thoughts on the book of Proverbs is Dave Frank. And so I just want to welcome Dave to our little studio here and just invite him into this. Dave's a buddy of mine that has often been referred to as being a brother of mine. He grew up with all sisters. I grew up with no siblings, and so him and I in many ways are a lot like brothers, and I'm very thankful sometimes, every once in a while, for him. And just how good of a buddy he is, and just that we're able to talk about things like this. And
Yep.
So, Dave, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you doing that. Today we're talking about chapters 21 through 25. And what are some things that stood out to you? I noticed you have a novel over there written down of items. I only need one or two, though, so please don't bore us with
So right
everything.
before we film, he said, hey, will you talk about chapters 21 through 25 with me through text message? I said, of course. And then, so I spent this weekend reading those 5 chapters and asking God, what do you want me to know? What stands out to me? And then I wrote about each verse, and I got this page and that page and just all these things that I would want to share with you. And this jerk tells me right before we film, oh, you're going to talk about 2. So
That's right.
That was a lot of
Whittle that puppy down, 1 or 2. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to do right now. And before we get started, the thing that's been most distracting today is the fact that Eric's wearing what I thought were bowling shoes to work. And he says they're not bowling shoes, but that pair of Nikes definitely looks like bowling shoes to me. And so that was distracting.
Hey, if bowling shoes are on sale, I'm buying them.
Yeah, good point. Good point with that. All right. So the first one I would like to talk about is verse 21. Chapter 21, verse 19, and it is It says, "Better to live in the desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife." And so one of the things that we are, as we're discipling our kids, as Kristen and I are teaching wisdom to kids, our children, is one of the things we have a conversation, and all families have certain conversations that are just always ongoing.
Yeah,
It's not like you just had one talk about it or whatever, but you have many conversations all the time. Is this idea that we say, hey, if you girls do want to get married, who you marry matters most. That's the biggest decision you're ever going to make in your life. And so we talk about like ways that you would help figure out if this is a good person for me to marry and so forth, and different things like that, because what our kids do for their jobs, where they choose to live, we want our kids to live close, we want them to have good jobs, all those things. But who you're with, I've known a lot of people who've made a lot of money, and one good divorce took that away. I've known people who have had just really great housing arrangements, and then now we have to have 2, and so they got to change those things and different things like that. And it's like, so who are you going to spend your life with, following Jesus with, matters the most. And when you see this idea of like a nagging wife or whatever like that, again, he's writing to his sons. But if Solomon was writing to his daughters, What kind of guys would she say for him to avoid? My guess is by reading Proverbs, it'd be stuff about hot-tempered men, guys who rush into fights, guys who don't take correction well, like all those different things. And so marriage is this really important idea, and who you choose to bring in really does matter a lot. Now, I will say also there's people who have been in marriages, who have been in tough spots, and what have they had to do? I mean, you and I have seen some men and women who have turned very difficult situations around by choosing to say, all right, I'm going to trust Jesus to handle this, and I'm gonna work on the things that I can change, right? And then over time, all of a sudden you go, man, I thought that thing was going to be done, and you know what? They're doing good. And I think that's one of the coolest things you and I ever get to see.
Sure.
Time and time again. So yeah, so that was the one of the priorities that I saw there. He is telling his sons, pick well from an early age.
Yeah. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about actually in that is talking about a nagging wife, which I don't think you and I either of us are married to nagging wives. I don't consider my wife to be someone that nags. I don't see your wife nag you. But at the same time, they do bring stuff up to us that we wish they wouldn't, that we need to hear.
Yep.
And it's like there's a difference there, right? If my wife's got to ask me more than 2 or 3 times to fix the leaky sink or get someone to do it, that's a me problem. That's not a her problem. Right. I don't consider nagging something that it's like there's certain things that I think are just our responsibility, to take care of. And oftentimes I think we can interpret it as being nagging when actually it's a prompting to be a little bit different or to take care of certain things. Yeah. And it's interesting because I didn't think of that till just now, that it can kind of transition into, and I know you have another verse I want you to go to. I want to get this one in. Staying in chapter 21, verses 25. The craving of a sluggard will be the death of him, because his hands refuse to work. All day long he craves more, but the righteous give without sparing. Okay? What do I do as a man with the things that God has given me? And when you talk about within the context of a relationship, I think to myself, in a marriage relationship specifically, do I see myself as being someone who is giving of myself freely to my wife and to my children, or am I kind of just craving and giving myself what I want? Now, we have those moments, let's be honest. I love to be able to, lay on the couch and watch football occasionally. I enjoy doing that, right? So it's not that I shouldn't be allowed to do that, but do I crave that so much that other things get neglected? And then I start, my wife's always nagging me to do stuff. It's like, oh, you mean like the basic essential functions of a human being within a home? Right. Like, she should be bugging you about that stuff, right? And so the craving of a sluggard will be a death of him, because his hands refuse to work. And again, I'll read the verse 26 too. All day long he craves for more, but the righteous give without sparing. There's a confidence that God desires for us to have, I think, because of who he calls us in being his children, his sons. And because of what he did with Jesus in dying on that cross to make us right with God, that we can then have the confidence to freely give of who we are to somebody else. And so as we enter into this series on Sundays about becoming the right one versus finding the right one, I am married 19 years at this point, and you're like, that would be, how many for you now? We're like 16? 16, 17. Yes. It's like, I'm still becoming the right one for her.
100%.
This isn't done. No, so I need that feedback, and I have to fight the cravings to just get what I want and do what I want. And I have to be reminded of this righteousness that frees me to give to those around me. So I appreciate you bringing that up, actually, and to translate that into how we talk to our kids about it. What was the other verse that you had mentioned with
And I think this is going to, as you're talking, I heard this. So then I think it's in 25 verse 10. I'm sorry, 23, okay? It's chapter 23, verse 10 says, "Do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words." There's a podcast, one of the podcasts I listen to, he's a Navy SEAL commander, Jocko, and he talks about leadership principles. And his number one leadership principle is this idea of what he would call extreme ownership. and you always are approaching every situation you're going into going, what can I do? And he talks about ego. Now this guy is, and how ego is so dangerous and how pride is so dangerous. This is a guy who accomplished many great things as a Navy SEAL commander. He created a kind of a new war plan while they were in Iraq. He brought the fight to the enemy. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's got this company. All he does is lift weights, and then he does leadership. The guy is as macho can be, and he's talking about how ego always lies to him. And someone says, "Hey, Jocko, I don't think your plan was that great." And he's like, and he goes, "What do? I get defensive." And blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
of course.
And then but he's always talking about this idea that can you put your ego and pride aside and actually get to the best thing. And so let's go back to the nagging wife thing for a minute here, because this is kind of what I was thinking about just now. If Eric and I are sitting down with a guy and he starts to talk to us about his wife, and let's say he uses the word, "She's nagging me." Okay, and I think that could be a common thing or whatever. One of the first questions we're going to ask, what's she nag you about? Well, she nags me about not fixing the kitchen sink. My next question is, did you tell her when you would do it? And then did you do it on that date? Or did you give her no communication, left her in a vacuum, so she has to wonder, are you even going to fix the sink? Do you even care that the sink's fixed? Because you don't say anything to her. And then if you did miss the date when you said you were going to do it, did you apologize to her? Did you let her know why you're going to do that? Why that happened and when you're going to fix it? See, sometimes we, and this can go either way, wives or husbands or whatever, but if you're not being told what's going on, and then meanwhile the other person's like, I said I was going to handle it. Why isn't that good enough? Fair. Mm-hmm. But if there's at all a track record of things not getting handled in a timely manner, and why wouldn't you want to honor the person, be respectful with them, and say, this is when I'm going to handle it? Because in all reality, if that happens in my life and I say I'm going to do something, I need room for my wife. She's got to trust me to do it by then.
True.
But if I don't do it by then, I have to humble myself. Like I say, I'm really sorry about that. I dropped the ball. How many times do our wives say things to us when we're not looking at them in the eyes and they think we hear them? We really don't, because we're around the corner or whatever. But like when Kristen sits down, she asks me, can you handle this and you can handle that? And I say yes, and then I don't. Well, drop the ball.
Right.
And she will forgive me but ego, pride.
Right.
And this is what this fool does. You might try to correct a friend. Say, hey, the way you kind of popped off in that meeting, that wasn't great. No one felt safe after you lost your temper or whatever. A fool would lose it on you, and they'd just get defensive. If you don't have ego and pride, they go, got it. And that's what I think it is. And fools don't want to be corrected, but they do want to talk about the misery and the pain that they're in.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, actually. Wow. We didn't talk about that ahead of time, but I actually really appreciate you adding that in there. I want to make sure that the men out there listening hear this. Here's what doesn't make you a man: fixing the sink yourself. So, like the example that we've thrown around, right? So, just to be clear, there are a number of things around the house that I can't do and that you can't do. Mm-hmm. And so it's not about what makes you a good man, husband, or father is being able to do everything yourself, but in humility, being able to make the call and ask that person if they can take care of it for you, hiring the person, whatever it is, And I think sometimes we can have an ego about the things we are able to do, because I can do that. I'll finish something, look back, and have what I hope is a healthy sense of pride about it. Yep. Wow, I did that, and that was pretty cool. But I don't want to have an unhealthy, right, sense of pride. When I look at Scripture talking about imitating Christ's humility, right, in the New Testament, Paul teaches us about imitating Christ's humility. If anyone had the ability to walk around touting who they are and what they've done and what they're going to do, it's him. Mm-hmm. What did he do? He kept pointing to the Father. He kept pointing people back to God. And it's like, this isn't about my wife thinking I'm great. Now, when she thinks I'm great, don't get me wrong, I eat it up.
That's like a warm blanket for you.
Oh, gosh,
he covers himself up in all that love. Yeah. So
wrap me up.
Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely love that. Don't get me wrong. But like my day-to-day operation is not going to be, my day-to-day feeling about myself shouldn't be wrapped up in how someone else feels about me, but more so how God feels about me. And that just calls me to operate in a freedom that is surrendering to Him, being humble to those around me, and being able to do what they need. And I think as men, we're in a unique situation where we are called to take care of certain things, which doesn't mean we're the specific people taking care of it hands-on necessarily, but it's getting done because we know we either need to do it or we've been asked to do it. And if we don't think we can or we don't know what to do we have the wherewithal to say to our spouse, in the context of marriage that we're talking about, I don't know how to do that and I don't know who to call. Like, it's fine, you know, because she'd rather hear that than nothing and then wonder why it's not done, right?
Well, that's any of us, right?
Idea.
Like, that's what all of us, I just want to know what's going on, right? Yeah. And, you know, this old guy, Glenn Hagee, the handyman, I always used to listen to him when he talked about projects. And he said the most powerful tool in your toolbox is your checkbook, right? Cut the check sometimes. There's simple ways to resolve these things. There are things you can do to this. Sure. And that is for us to understand that's like, again, you don't want to be a fool and all you're going to do is end up being offended. You're going to end up making people feel like you're not trustworthy. Right. And man, I can't even tell you when you miss the mark without you losing it. Yeah, you know, like, right. It's like, that's a hard place to live. That's a hard place to reside. Ego and pride are in us, right, in every way. And it's just like, you got to push that aside. And I'll try to make this the last thing. I really will. But a few years ago, I had a revelation. My wife isn't trying to kill me. Okay, she isn't trying to poison me slowly over a year so that it doesn't show up in a toxicology report when I'm dead in the bed or anything like that. She's not doing any of those things to me. My wife actually wants me around, and she wants what's best for me.
Right.
So when my wife speaks to me, sometimes she says it in a way, and we got to talk it out. And it's like, that was hard to hear that way. I understand what you're saying, but just like for you guys with your wives, it's like, you want the absolute best for them. So if you understand that when someone who's giving you feedback only wants what's best for you, you can take it down a couple notches and go, okay. Do I like feeling bristly because it's like, oh gosh, you know, this is hard for me? No, I don't like that. But what I don't like the idea of more is that, you know, we would sit on that thing for 5-10 years and I never knew. Right? And it's like, oh man, we could have handled that, you know, in 3 months. It could have been over. So I just say, again, you know, when you know that people actually want what's best for you and they speak correction into you, you're great.
I think one of the most common things that I don't like is when my wife will come to me and say, I want to talk to you about this, but I don't know that you're going to. I don't know that it's going to be received well.
What do you mean I'm not going to receive it well?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
amazing.
It's like, man, that boy, does that point to my inability to listen, you know? And it does happen still to this day, but I try to minimize that, of course. So, Dave, thanks for joining me. I love having buddies that enjoy being in the Word and talking about it too. And so we actually enjoy this. This isn't something where we feel we have to do. We actually enjoy it. So we hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Feel free to like the page and follow and all those things to our YouTube channel.
What are you even asking people to do right now? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's follow.
Smash the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up like. That's all you need to do.
There you go. Thank God for you. Yeah. Sometimes. Anyways, hope we can have you guys back here as we will be wrapping up with our last series next week. So enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.